You're live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Small Talk by Great Learning. I hope you're all safe and in good health. We have with us Ankur Warikoo, and I'm going to introduce him in just a minute. People are still joining, so I think like we have done in the past episodes, let's give them a few minutes to jump in. I'm joining from Singapore. I believe Ankur is in Gurgaon, right, Ankur?
Delhi NCR, Faridabad technically, it's Delhi NCR.
Delhi NCR. And I think we have people from several countries actually joining this.
How are things changed after the Singapore lockdown one?
It's actually, pretty tight here. I have never seen so many police cars in Singapore.
Wow.
Usually they're never visible, but now if you step out, there's always police cars patrolling. And you can't go out without a mask.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, only exception is if you're running. If you're running, you're allowed to not wear a mask.
Oh, really? That's weird.
Yeah. I guess it's very difficult to breathe with a mask when you're running.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to run.
You're allowed to exercise. You're allowed to go out. You're allowed to go to a park for exercise.
I would have imagined running is riskier because the droplets are coming out a lot more.
That is true. But you're supposed to maintain distance, and people are doing that.
Of course, yeah.
So if you're going like this, they'll go like that. It's actually pretty funny. Yeah, there's a lot of funny behavior. Yeah. All malls, restaurants, everything has been closed.
Closed.
Yeah. So my kids are having their online school, in 2 rooms. So internet bandwidth is full utilization,
It's totally going on. I was checking some stats. China in March consumed its highest ever internet in history.
Wow.
Which is not surprising, but considering it's China, it's like, wow, someone topped that as well.
That's right. I think, April will be the maximum in the world.
Really?
So there are people from Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Kurukshetra.
Wow.
Yeah, different places. Somebody from UK. Yeah. So it's 3 minutes past, 4 minutes now. So we'll just give it another 1 minute and then we'll get started. What are you doing for entertainment?
Kids.
You are the entertainment for kids. Not
actually, that's so true. That's so true. We kid ourselves into believing that they are the entertainment. But days have been surprisingly busy, and I'm so glad that they have been. So it's almost like I start on a schedule and don't even know when it's like 6 or 7, and then the day's over. Then you get back. But the one good thing that I'm really happy about is, and I'm going to speak about this in our conversation as well. we don't have a television, so.
Oh wow.
So, like, I have no idea about anything that's happening on Netflix, Amazon Prime.
So you've not heard of Tiger King?
I've heard of it, but I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what that is.
I think you're not missing a whole lot. So let's just.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Hey, there's somebody from Japan.
Oh wow.
Wow, yeah. And Bhubaneswar and Kolkata, Himachal, Rajasthan, Mumbai. Yeah.
Very good.
So people are balancing between Netflix and Udemy apparently.
It's like this back in the days. If you ask him, what's your favorite TV channel? Everyone would say it's Discovery, because that's like the smart thing to say. Right? But you could be watching like ZTV and shit, but it's Discovery. So it's like the same thing. What are you doing for entertainment? I'm like, oh, I'm on Coursera and Udemy. But all that they're doing is Netflix.
Yeah. All right. So I think let's get started. Welcome again, everyone, to the 4th episode of Small Talk by Great Learning. Thank you all for joining. I hope you're all safe and in good health. So in the first episode of Small Talk, we spoke about how to manage startups in the crisis and what should be their plan of action. In the second one, we spoke to a senior leader from Wipro about how IT companies are dealing with this and what's the future prospects for them. In the third one, we spoke to Shripati Acharya, who's a managing partner at a VC firm called Prime Ventures, on what advice they are giving to their startups and what should be the playbook for startups. So today we are joined by Ankur Warikoo, and today the focus is on you and me, the individual. What does all this mean for us, and what should we be thinking about? So every day for the past month and more than a month now, WhatsApp is filled with all the dreadful news from everywhere about the spread of the virus, about the economic crisis that is coming, and the novelty of working from home has worn off. That was in the beginning, that sounded cool. That's gone now, and now it's becoming tedious. And every guru that is out there is talking about the bleak economic scenario. And of course, we're all experiencing things that we've never experienced before and may never experience again in our life, right? So for example, for me, this is the longest in 15 years that I have not been on a flight, okay? Or that I have not actually put on my business shirt and trousers, and thanks to Small Talk, I'm at least shaving once a week, so it's very new. And, but of course, it's also the longest I've spent with my family. I'm grateful for that. But for all of us who are used to going to work every day, who are used to being in control, who are used to meeting people, this is very different and it's very difficult, right? So the anxiety about what's happening and about the future, the grief and empathy for people who are, facing so many hardships because of this, the concern for our own family members, particularly our parents and grandparents who are aged, right? So these are all the feelings that we are experiencing, and it's natural. So in such a situation, how are we supposed to stay motivated and positive? How do we orient our minds to to do something meaningful and purposeful? So these are the questions we'll discuss with Ankur, my good friend. He has thought about these things, self-awareness and motivation, and quite deeply. And he's spoken about them in several forums in the past. I've known Ankur for close to a decade now, and it's been amazing to see his transition from executive in a big company to a startup entrepreneur to deep thinker and motivational speaker. So it's wonderful to have you here, Ankur.
Thank you so much, Mohan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So so all of you that have joined us, thank you once again. Warm welcome to you. I'm going to ask Ankur a few questions first. And then I'll open it up for your questions. So whatever questions you have, you please put it on the chat, and then I'll take them up once I'm done with my questions. So Ankur, so you're a successful entrepreneur, angel investor, mentor, coach, and now a huge influencer. You've had quite an impact guiding young people, and but you also put out a failure CV, which has become quite the internet sensation. So, for those in the audience that don't know you, maybe you could share some highlights about your background, maybe a couple of stories of success and disappointments.
Sure. I'm a fascinating mix, Mohan, of lots of failures, lots of pivots in life, very unstructured life, if you will, not stable by any measure. I remember I wasn't training myself to become an entrepreneur ever. I was in fact training myself to become a space scientist. I'd gone to the US for a PhD program. Very quickly realized that that was not what I wanted to do. I was just good at it, but it didn't make me happy. So I dropped out of the PhD several years back when dropping out of education was not the cool thing. Today it is. Like, I literally walk into a room and I say I'm a PhD dropout, and people are like, oh my God, every successful person we know has dropped out of something. So you must be successful. And
that makes no sense, by the way. That makes two of us. I dropped out of my PhD in the year 2000 as well.
Wow, that is awesome. So I dropped out of my PhD in 2004, so very close to it, and I'm sure you relate to it so totally.
Yes.
And then I came back to India. I was completely clueless what to do, and people were like, "Look, you're confused. So why don't you do what most confused people do in life? Go get an MBA." And I was like, "Sure, I'll think about that." And then I went to the ISB to get my MBA. I became a management consultant, and one fine evening, just catching up with a friend of mine, and he talked about a startup that he just started. I thought that it was a great idea, so I offered to help without leaving my consulting job. So about a year, I had a day job as a consultant, and during night I was Batman trying to make my own startup work. And did that for a year, and then joined the startup full time, which was in 2009, exactly about 10, 11 years back. And that started the entrepreneurial journey. And I've had the privilege of, as you mentioned, starting on my own, joining a really large company and starting the India business for them, then buying that business from them and making it independent and starting all over again, doing that, and then stepping down as a CEO, becoming jobless all over again. So right now, ironically and incidentally, I'm exactly where I was 10 years back, which is jobless, no idea what I will be doing in my life, no plan for the future, and completely open with whatever comes my way. And of course, evaluating a lot.
But with lots of wisdom and experience.
Yeah, well, and thankfully, right? So I'm embarrassed by who I was even a year back, and that's helped me grow. But it's fascinating how life has almost come back a circle after a decade. A lot has happened between, and I am where I am. Couldn't be complaining.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Excellent. So, my journey, there are definite parallels, between our journeys. I also went to business school after my first startup in the US, and then came to India, and then have been an investor and entrepreneur. But let's jump into our theme for today. So, I've given the preamble of how we are all feeling, what we are all going through, right? So in an environment like this, where do we look for, and what should we do to stay motivated? And what are some of the sources to draw motivation and positivity from?
So look, I have a very simple take on this, Mohan, and this is something that I've realized over years. Let me start with a rather ridiculous example. None of us, none of the audiences that are listening to this, none of the viewers can ever claim that they went to the gym one fine day and got six-pack abs. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, it's physically, biologically not possible. Mm-hmm. For you to get six-pack abs, it requires you to be committed. It requires you to be disciplined. It requires you to be doing something every single day and make changes to your life. Now, inspiration and motivation is very similar to that. I think the trick that we have all fallen for is that I can listen to a motivating conversation like this. I can listen to a motivating video. I can read a motivating book. I can do something that uplifts me, and that will set me up for a very long time. That will get me to act, which is far from the truth. That's not how it works. Motivation is actually the worst friend possible, because it somehow is never there when we really want it. So we don't need motivation to eat that extra slice of pizza. We don't need motivation to sleep for another 15 minutes. We don't need motivation to drink that another glass of wine. We don't need motivation to do any of the things that we know we shouldn't be doing. But suddenly, for us to feel positive, for us to get things done, for us to work, for us to figure things out, we need motivation, and it's nowhere to be found. It's almost like, where is this friend? Why is this friend always hanging around when we are in dark times? So I think of motivation as a discipline. I don't think of motivation as something that comes your way and sets you up for a long time. I think of it as a discipline, which means if you want to be motivated, if you want to feel inspired and get to do things, you have to do that consistently every single day. You have to read something, watch something, hear something, think something, do something that leaves you inspired every single day. And honestly, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be this today, it could be a book tomorrow, it could be someone else day after. But what it requires is the commitment to do that every single day. Because here's the reality. The reality is, as you mentioned right in the beginning, today we are bombarded by news that we shouldn't be consuming. It's like junk food for the mind.
We
are completely getting access to unlimited dosages of junk food for the mind. All the worst things that are happening in the world, we read it the first thing we get up in the morning on WhatsApp. All the shit that has broken loose last evening, we watch it on the news. Everything that could possibly go wrong, we read it on Twitter, we read it on Facebook, we read it everywhere else. And that is not control. It's just coming in and hitting us with very little thought given to how it affects us. So we are every day consuming bad news, sporadically consuming good news or motivating news or uplifting things. And then we expect us to feel good about things. It's not going to happen. It's biologically impossible. So the only thing that I would say to this rather deep question is a simple response. Think of motivation and inspiration as a discipline. Think of it as a choice, and you have to exercise that choice every day. It doesn't matter what you exercise it with, it matters whether you do it or not. And that also means that you shut down your mind from all the evil things that you can possibly do. Devote your energy only on reading a few things, following a few people who give you great, very simple, unbiased, unbiased, objective information. And that's the way that you keep yourself safe.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. What about, this idea of retaining positivity, right? When we are bombarded with so much negativity, what have you been doing, to stay positive?
So my mental model around that, Mohan, is something that I call the worst case simulation. And the way it works is the following. Wherever spot I am in life, wherever I am, whatever is it that I'm doing, there will always be some level of anxiety. There will always be some level of probability that this wouldn't work. There will always be something stopping me, some inhibition that's going on. And I always ask myself, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? And this is not meant to be like, oh, nothing worse can happen. It's actually a genuine question. What's the worst thing that can happen? And then you ask yourself a much harder question, which is, if the worst thing were to happen, how will I react to it socially, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially? For a lot of people, the worst thing right now could be losing your job. And it's possible that may snatch away a little bit of your financial stability, but it's also quite likely it may not take away your financial independence. And the difference is you have enough to sustain, but you suddenly don't have enough to dream and to desire. And that's not such a bad spot to be in. I'm living in a really nice, fancy place, but I don't own it as well. The banks own it. So I ask myself, like, if I were to have, and I don't have an income stream right now, it's nothing that I'm working. I have sporadic incomes coming here and there. It's not that I'm wealthy or anything like that or a balance. I have a runway. Let's say the world were not to change by the time the runway is over. So that's a scary situation because I have family, I have myself, and so on and so forth. I have told myself, the worst case scenario actually is that I will just sell this house. As simple as that. And it sounds simple only when you go about that mental thought. But the first time you think about it, like, oh shit, that's like the worst thing ever. But the more you think about it, you realize you're actually not in such a bad shape as you think you are. You're suddenly mentally prepared for the worst outcome possible, which has very low probability, but at least you're ready for it. And suddenly, at least by this mechanism, it works for me, take it for what it's worth, I feel a lot more positive about everything around me. Because I suddenly feel this wave of gratitude. I feel this wave of, I'm grateful for having a roof on my head. Like it's not one of those that we read about on the news, which are having miserable lives. We at least are fortunate that we have some balance. We have something that helps us or just saves us and keeps us sane. The only thing that's keeping us anxious, the only thing that's driving away our positivity is just the clash between our expectations of where we want to be and the reality of where we are. That's it. That's the truth. Yeah. It's just the gap. And if we were to suddenly take that expectation away and like, I don't need much to survive, it may be a complete deal.
Hey, I think there's some issue with your microphone. It's a little bit choppy.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is better.
Okay, sorry. I'll try and be louder.
Yeah, and just a little bit slow. Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
So, if I understand you, and I think it's a very interesting perspective, right? So you framed for yourself a worst case scenario, and then, anything that's better than that worst case scenario doesn't seem so bad, and that's helping you stay positive. So I think that's actually quite interesting. And when you look at it from that perspective, we're all very, very fortunate.
Very much.
And we have a lot to be grateful for. So, within my organization, I shared a message, several weeks back that, to touch upon your point of the difference between expectation and reality, right? We all have a certain notion of success, right? We all have a certain notion of, what we should be achieving, right? Either, external expectations put on us or expectations we have put on us ourselves, right? And I think this is one of those times where it's important that we reorient that, right? What is success, right? Today, if you're actually healthy, that's success. If your family is healthy, that's success. If you're having a comfortable life, that's success, right? If you have visibility for your life for the next few months where you're okay, that's success. Similarly for companies, if you survive, that's success. For me personally, if we are able to get through this without having to cut a lot of jobs, I'll be very proud, right? That's success, right? So I think the metrics of what success, is, can change. It doesn't have to be the same that they've always been. Till last month, we were all running after metrics and running after, targets and all of those things. We just, do a little bit of reorientation, and suddenly we'll find out that we have a lot to be grateful for.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I'm so glad you called this out. I can speak on and on about success and failure, and this is the strongest points that I live by. We very rarely define success for our own selves.
Correct.
We allow the world to define it for us, and we very rarely stop and realize that we have been living someone else's life and not ours, even while we think we were living ours. And this is a great time for us to revisit that and define it for yourself.
Yeah. So I think that, expectations and reality, that's the point that I think the takeaway from this is that, our positivity and happiness is a function of the gap between those two, right? As long as we are able to manage expectations, I think, we'll be okay. Let me get into something specific. Most of our listeners are probably in this situation. If they're working in let's say a junior or a middle role, in a middle management role in a company, they don't have the ability to influence strategic decisions, right? And by definition, most people are in those situations. So what happens to the company and to their roles may not be in their hands. And that could lead to a feeling of powerlessness, which could feel depressing, right? So how should people think about their roles, and what should they do to add value in such times, in your opinion? How do you address this issue of feeling powerless?
No, it's a very real issue, and I go back to 2 years back. I had the opportunity to interact with the Prime Minister of Singapore, and and someone asked him this question, which is, what have you realized the most after having spent time in such a powerful position in such a great country? And his answer was brilliant. He was like, I realized that 95% of the problems that I sleep with at night, I have no control over. That's it. And this ties back to what the COO of Groupon, who was at one time my manager, he used to say, and this was his favorite phrase during the weekly business review that we used to have. He used to always say, control the controllables. Control the controllables. And it's a very Amazon way of thinking, and he was from Amazon. What I'm trying to say is, this feeling of helplessness comes in because at some point of time, it has been told to us that taking charge of your life and controlling all aspects of it is a reflection of a successful life. But we were never told that 95% of the things that happen to us will not be in our control. So we feel this dichotomy of, I was told that being in control is the right thing, but I suddenly don't have control. How do I reconcile with that? And the only thing that helps me in such a situation is thinking of, what is it that I control? There are lots of things that I don't. And that is irrespective of whether I'm the CEO or whether I'm anyone else. Because look, 2 months back, most CEOs of Every large company in the world were in control, and now not so much anymore. Everything possible that could go wrong has gone wrong for a lot of companies. So it happens to everyone, not just middle or junior management. So here are my three things. One is recognize what is in your control. Now, most likely what's in your control is the quality of work that you're doing, the focus with which you do it, and how you're preparing yourself for all possible scenarios. Pretty much what we just spoke about for the last response. Number two is also recognizing how do you stay dissociated from everything that is outside of your control, but you're feeling it. Not that it's happening to you, because you can't dissociate yourself from that, but at least the feelings that it generates. And there, my strong appeal to you, do not indulge in office gossip right now. Do not indulge in just random banter right now, because nothing fruitful or fulfilling will come out of that right now. Everyone's anxious. It's the natural human tendency to gossip and to speak about that, to just heal yourself and feel light. But if you're someone who gets affected by it, the best thing you can do is stay out of it. Don't indulge in it. Don't participate in it. Don't be even a mute spectator. It doesn't help. And number three, always be ready, as I said, for what you are required to do, even if the worst case scenario happens, which is if it's financial stability for your house, be ready for that. If it is upskilling for you to find whatever comes next to you or you have to go for, do that. If it's being in good relationships with your colleagues so that you can rely on their help, please do that. If it is about building a network that you can tap into because the worst may happen, please do that. Anything possible that is outside of the ordinary has to be done, because these are not ordinary times. So naturally, the reaction also cannot be ordinary. It will require you to do something that is out of the ordinary. So the worst mistake you can make if you're someone who thinks that you're a cog in the wheel and you don't have enough influence is, one, to succumb your emotions to all that is possibly going to happen. Two is be completely ill-prepared for when it happens to you. And three, have no idea what the worst case can be, or just act or pretend or even be shocked when it happens. Mm-hmm. None of that is the mark of any smart professional. You can't avoid if the worst is going to happen to you. You simply can't. Organizations can't. So you're still just an individual. All you can do is just be ready for change.
Yeah. No, in fact, this is something related to this is something that I mentioned to, my team as well, that, to your point about not having control on most things that happen right now may not be your fault. Even if something bad happens to you, it's not your fault. Right. So if you don't have to, take it negatively. You don't have to see it as a issue with yourself. Right. So I think that's another matter of orienting your mind. Something that you mentioned leads me to my next question. Right. So people find it very difficult to deal with uncertainty. Right. We're just fundamentally not good at dealing with uncertainty. And there's been books written about this, very famous books. Right. And of course, right now, everybody's worried about a recession. Like you mentioned, the job situation is on everybody's mind. So what advice do you have to cope with this? You did mention a few things right now, in terms of, upskilling, in terms of building a network, and, there's a good chance that for a lot of people, this will be a reality. And, I think the worst part is that, not there being an expectation of that, but it not happening. So that kind of that sword is kind of dangling, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think is the best way somebody can cope with that?
Look, it's an answer already, and all of us, not just you, Mohan. It's the only thing that helps us deal with anxiety and uncertainty is preparation. That's it. There's nothing else. Nothing else. It's not wishful thinking. It's not astrology. It is not putting in garbs of religion, or even having money for that. It is just about your preparation. So whatever is required for you to be prepared for that uncertainty is what you want to do. That could mean upskilling yourself. That could mean, again, building your network. That could mean being prepared for just being jobless for 6 months and yet having the mind frame that you pick yourself up and then get yourself back on your feet. Anything that is required for that is the only thing that matters. Everything else is hogwash. So I'm telling this to a lot of people that I'm interacting with nowadays, that ask yourself, what is the post-COVID world going to look for someone like you? Ask this question, think deeply about it, because this is not just some random thing that has happened in the world. This has shifted the world materially. Some industries have been permanently altered, or at least altered for the next foreseeable future. Some are seeing a temporary blip, but the way they come back to it is not going to be the same that it was 3 months back. So ask yourself, what is the post-COVID world going to look like? And then ask yourself, what do I have to do to prepare for it? And that is what you have to fill in. Whatever is required, however hard it is, has to be done. There is no way out. There's nothing that you can do to make yourself feel better. That is the only way you can deal with the uncertainty, because then at least you're prepared for what that changed world will look like, as against sitting down there and then wishing that nothing happens to you, or at least feeling anxious that something may happen and how should
you. Great Learning is a e-learning company, and to your point about folks upskilling, in the last 4 or 5 weeks, I think we've had about 1 lakh people come into our platform to start learning. Right? We've put out something called Great Learning Academy with a lot of free courses. We've just made them free. We never offered free courses before that, but we did that, and so a lot of people. In fact, the average consumption of content per day per person is 2 hours. Okay, and we are shocked. How first we thought it's a bug. Then we said, like, do we have some like entertainment content hidden within our content? Because nobody spends 2 hours per day learning.
That is crazy.
And this is a learning company CEO telling you that.
That is crazy. That's almost like going to school or college.
Exactly. Average 2 hours.
That is awesome.
And every week we are noticing, okay, maybe the initial enthusiasm it will wear off, but no, it's actually steady. It's maintained like that. So Great Learning Academy, for those of you that are interested, there are 30 plus courses on very relevant topics. You can go sign up. It's absolutely free. We have a version of that for companies as well. We've opened it to a lot of companies, and then, I'm shocked that PSUs are actually sharing it with their employees. We have people from like 1,000 people from Maruti.
Wow.
BHEL, NTPC, PSU employees are upskilling. So it's actually quite heartwarming to see people doing that, right? It's amazing. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. And of course, we will be doing these. So we are doing a lot of live sessions as well, with expert gurus. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll hear about all of those, and you'll hear about future sessions of SmallTalk as well. So now let's end my questions on a positive note before we take audience questions. This whole work at home situation has also led to a lot of positiveness, right? So in my case, I'm spending very quality time with my kids. I'm actually working out fairly regularly, which I always, tried to escape before, and a lot of folks are learning, right? So, what are some of the other things that you've heard people do, just in terms of giving ideas on how to use this time well, right? Because in our professional lives, we don't get opportunities like this again and again.
No, honestly, there isn't much beyond what's already been done. I say this time and again, do not take this as something which just happened and was normal. Like, this is possibly a once in a lifetime event that's happened for most of us. And that means you're never going to get this much time with your family ever again. It's possibly the first time that most of us are spending time with our parents or with our spouses or with our kids 24/7 for extended periods of time beyond a vacation. Right? This is unnatural, and that means that I think a lot of relationships are being discovered for the first time.
Yeah,
a lot of idiosyncrasies of people are emerging for the first time.
Yes.
A lot of like, oh, I didn't know you were like this is happening.
Yes.
And but it's a fascinating time to get to play with your family, to get to know them beyond what you knew of them, to spend time with them in meaningful manners, to spend time on yourself, to refresh yourself, to pick up a new art, to pick up a new hobby, to pick up something that you could do indoors. And there's so many things. And I genuinely wish that most of us, if not all, come out as a different individual. Like the benchmark for you should be when your office or your school or your college opens, which may happen in a few weeks or months, whosoever meets you is left saying, "Oh my God, you've changed." Like that is what you have to get. Like that's your goal.
Yeah.
And if you can get to that positively, then I think it's job well done.
Yeah. Now you put a tall order.
Pick up meditation. I wish nothing else for anyone, but please, yoga, meditation, work out like Mohan and family are doing. Like cook at home, become a good cook, become a gardener, start singing, start dancing. There's so many things that you want to do.
Yeah. No, my workout started because my kids are, and I have to keep up with them. Yeah. Well, let's take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of questions around, jobs and motivation. So I think we've talked about them. So I'll look at some of the other ones. Can you describe success? Why success is totally dependent if they're working in a metro city? Why small city hardworking employee is not able to grow and succeed in most MNC companies?
That's nearly not true, at least in my experience. I run a company where almost 60 to 70% people have not studied or are not from a metro city. And I find them to be far hardworking. I find them to be far more committed because they have something to prove and they have this inner desire to do things work. So at least my data point in my life doesn't seem to suggest that. I do recognize, without being dismissive of what your question could mean, I do recognize that people from metro sit on a lot more opportunities because just of the exposure and everything else. But I don't think that that's a criteria for success. It's definitely a criteria for options. So they may have a lot more options, but once they are in it and once they are up against anyone else who may not have had that exposure to those opportunities, I think it's an equal plan. And if you were to work hard, you can make it. And I've seen that happen.
Yeah. So the next question is that, so there's a bunch of questions about technical stuff. I'm going to skip those.
I see one question that's come, which is Neha Kaplish. What's your new normal and what does your daily schedule look like?
Exactly what I was going to ask. That was the question I was going to ask.
All right. So let me answer that from Neha. So one thing before this is a lot of people have been asking me, and I've spoken about this lately, of how do you be productive while working from home? Because it's not something that most of us are used to. The boundaries blurred. 2 steps you're in your kitchen, 2 steps you're in your bedroom, 2 steps you're in your washroom, and there's no physical boundaries. So how do you actually create that? And the biggest thing that helps, the absolute one thing that matters, is for you to have a schedule. Not a schedule for your work, but your schedule for your day. Right from when you get up to when you sleep, everything needs to be scheduled because there is no physical boundary. So you have to create a mental boundary. And what is equally important is putting your family, if it's possible, on a schedule as well. Because the last thing you want is that you're on a schedule and your family is not, and then the times are just crisscrossing and not making it happen.
Yeah.
And I recognize that may be hard, especially if you're living with parents or anyone else, but try as much as you can with this. My new normal, and I don't think I'm going to go back to this, my new normal are Zoom calls. Like I have not picked up my phone to make a phone call in the last 3 weeks. I've not spoken to anyone on the phone. Like even if I have a 5-minute chat, I just open up my personal Zoom account and just have a Zoom call. And I feel this immense transformation in just witnessing a person on a screen and their emotions and their body language and having that chat. So I think my new normal is going to be this realization that meeting people is, of course, great, but for that, you shouldn't be traveling 1.5 hours one way. And if it's any lesser, then just make it happen over a video call.
what is another question was related to that. What is your daily dose of entertainment?
I my my daily dose of like I'm a very boring person. My daily dose of entertainment is my work. Honestly, I love my work.
Come on, don't be so boring. Come on.
No, I swear, there's nothing. I was in fact, Mohan and I were chatting before the session started. We don't have a television at home, so I don't watch anything. I have no idea what Game of Thrones is. I have no idea what Tiger Club, King Club, whatever it was. I don't know what it is. I've not seen any series. I only watch movies when I'm on a flight where I download them, which of course I've not taken for a very long time. So all that I'm doing is I'm creating content, which I love, and that is my form of entertainment because I love just creating that content and thinking about how it could be shown and so on. I love my work, which is around meeting first-time founders and meeting entrepreneurs and discussing and jamming on ideas and helping them think through the problems. That is genuinely a lot of fun, and that doesn't drain me. So for me, seeking entertainment is like an escape from a world that drains you, but in the world that you live doesn't drain you, then maybe you don't need entertainment. That is your entertainment. That's the case with me.
Oh man, I thought you were way more interesting than that.
I am super boring. Super boring.
You know, so talking about advising entrepreneurs, there was a question about, you know, a first-time entrepreneur. How do they decide whether they, you know, keep going or they give up and move on? How should they decide that?
So I was asked this question this morning, you know, on a webinar as well. So there are two types of founders. One is a first-time founder who's in it right now, and second is future founder who may be thinking of starting up. But the one who's in the middle of this, these are brutal times. These are absolutely brutal times. So there's only one thing that matters: survival. That's it. It's not growth. It is not you trying to find product market fit as well. It's not you trying to find your next set of customers. It's not you creating a brand. It's not you marketing it to customers. It is just plain survival. Because if you're able to survive through a crisis when almost everyone else is dying, you will have figured a lot more about the market, your customers, and everything that you need to do than anyone else. So if there's anything that I can advise, is cut your costs right away. Whatever was frivolous, whatever was unnecessary, do that. Renegotiate all your costs with your server companies, with your vendors, with your landlords, everything possible. Everyone's moved to remote working. Make that happen as much as and as farther out as possible so that you benefit from the lower cost of managing a remote team. Hopefully that is the case and it's not higher than what it was. And just make your runway extend to 12 to 18 months, whatever it takes to do that. You're not going to be able to raise money as easily as you think it is. You're not going to raise debt as easily as it is. Revenue is not going to come in as easy as it is. So you have no choice but to focus only on survival. Everything else is distraction.
Mm-hmm. You know, but like a related question to that is that you also have to have a view on, you know, your business. Is that actually going to be, you know, better off after the crisis or worse off, right? So, and that there's another question around that. What are some of the things that you think, you know, will be in much more demand after the crisis?
So clearly, and that's a good question, which is a crisis affects everyone, but the nature of that effect is different. There are some industry effects. So in any crisis, demand is muted, consumerism falls down, economic activity falls down, so on and so forth. But there are some industries for which this is temporary. There are some industries for which this is permanent or very long. And that's the question to ask. My view is that anything that is digital in nature, whether it is education, whether it is content, whether it is deliveries, whether it is at-home services, whether it is at-home entertainment, all of these are going to see an upsurge because people will always be now anxious stepping out. It's not going to be as normal as it was. There will always be hesitation. And for things which are very simple, imagine if you were to send your kids or go yourself to a birthday party, you will actually ask a question that you've never asked before, which is, does this person really mean that much to me that I'm more willing to take that risk? Like, that is the kind of question that you will start asking, which will throw a completely different situation. And that means that there will be an environment that will be created around social gatherings online. And it will, of course, be much better than house party. It has to be much better than that. So all of that will see an upsurge. I think agriculture will see an upsurge. I think healthcare will see massive upsurge. definitely digital healthcare will see massive upsurge. Preventive healthcare will see massive upsurge. I feel some manufacturing around core products or core raw materials becoming cheaper, becoming faster, becoming decentralized, and not having so much of investments come through will become a lot more trendier, if I may say so. So there are a lot of industries, of course, that will be positively impacted, and of course, a lot that will be very much.
Absolutely. Do you have a morning routine that you follow to keep your mind at its peak performance throughout the day? This person is very curious to know.
It's one of the best gifts I've given myself. There are two things that I'm really proud of. One is to get into a fitness routine, which was almost 7-8 years back. And second is to get into this morning routine almost 3 years back. So here's very simply what I do. I wake up really, really early. And the trick to waking up early is not waking up early. The trick to waking up early is sleeping on time, which is a really hard thing to do in today's world because there's Netflix and there's everything else sucking at your attention. So I sleep at 9:30 every day. I get up at 4:30 every day.
Wow.
And at 4:30 when I get up, for the next 5 hours, it's just me and my time. I meditate, I read, I write, I sing, I go for a workout. When things were not in a lockdown, I used to play, have a really nice breakfast, get ready for work. So by the time I left for work, which is around 9:30, I had 5 hours to myself doing things that I want to do. And that meant nothing in the day could take away my balance. Literally nothing could take away my balance. I have found my balance even before my day started.
Yeah.
So no social media comment, no employee, no event, no situation, no investor can shake me so much that I will just feel like, oh my God, my day's gone for the toss and I can't get it back. And this has been one of the best things that I've done for myself, and I continue to do it even now.
That is very cool. I mean, if you've been able to get into that rhythm, that is extremely cool. In fact, there are several very, very successful leaders. You know, when I say successful, people who have done amazing things, right? They may be leaders, they may be scientists, they may be writers, what have you, that have that morning thing. Unfortunately, I've not been able to crack that, you know, like, yeah. So I'm just not a morning person so far. So maybe this will inspire me to try that.
Awesome.
So let me take one more question. Do you think the IT industry will adopt this work from home? You know, and see, people are like one of the biggest costs, and all IT companies have massive campuses, massive infrastructure, you know, all of that, right? And they're employing lakhs of people. Each person has, I don't know what their metric is, like, you know, maybe 70, 80 square feet of space, right? So do you think this changes that completely? You think IT companies are going to rethink all of that?
Yeah, I have a strong suspicion, yes. So I was speaking to a very senior leader at Genpact the other day, and Genpact runs an out-and-out process outsourcing unit, and they're really good with that, global. But it's also a processing unit where if people are working from home, you certainly can't ask them to work from their laptop or their phones. These are like highly regulated companies and industry, right? So they need compliance checks and so on and so forth. So here's what Genpact Gurgaon did, and I kid you not, I was shocked.
Okay.
They actually shipped a CPU and a monitor and a keyboard to the doorstep of each and every employee that was working from home, because that's the only way they could get them back online. Now, that's a massive effort. Like, this is running into tens and thousands
of big investment.
Exactly, right? So now the question I ask is, Genpact made all this investment. They now have figured, hopefully, a way to do all of this without their grand campuses and all. What's the likelihood that after 3 to 6 months, when everything is normal, hopefully, they will go back to the old ways of doing things? I think not.
I don't think so either. I think, you know, if they've made that investment, if they've trained people to work, you know, why go back?
Exactly, right? So it is quite likely that the next onboarding of Genpact, when you join it, is at your doorstep, where you get this really nice fancy package. It has a CPU, it has a monitor, it has a keyboard, it welcomes you, it has this online message coming in from the CEO and whosoever, and they maybe have an offsite once or twice a month for you.
Yeah.
And imagine the power
and the Geo dongle.
Yeah, exactly, which is very important, right? Nothing works without geo, right? So and that is what's going to happen, right? They have realized, or not just they, anyone else have realized that they're suddenly not constrained by physical boundaries.
Right.
And that's a massive leap, and it's a massive stress off. How do they think about the current fixed cost investment that I've made, and particularly for the Wipros and the Infosys and the TCSs of the world? I really don't know, and I'm sure they're thinking about this as much. But it'll be awesome if all of that is just converted into great public utility areas that are managed by them, and everyone just gets to work from home and then come there for a house party every Friday night.
Yeah. So in fact, I've heard something. I was talking to uncle in the US, right? And so he was, he's building like a health related resort, right? And so, they have corporate clients and so forth, right? So some of their corporate clients are saying they're actually thinking about not having an office at all, and once a week just meeting at the health resort.
Wonderful.
What you just said, right? So particularly if you're small teams, I think that's a very viable option.
Absolutely. No, I think gig economy is going to explode. Offices are going to get less and less important, and you'll just see a proliferation. You just see a lot more people not working for specific companies and projects and salaries, but just becoming great at their art and using their time to just make more and more money. That's my prediction.
Good. I have two questions here. So one is that as an HR professional, as people managers, what are some ideas for them to keep the team positive and motivated because they're not able to meet them, right? Everybody's working, and how do they make sure that performance doesn't drop? So this is a question from a perspective of a people manager.
So this is a good question, and I feel passionately about this. The rules of the game have changed, and it's very clear that you still need to, if not as much, definitely harder than what you used to do in the past for employee engagement. There are a few things that I've done that we're testing, and it seems to be working. Number one, this was counterintuitive. When you were working in an office, almost every time you saw a group of people hanging out together, having smokes, or just chilling at the water cooler, or browsing Instagram and so on and so forth, you're like, get back to it. Now it's exactly the opposite. You want people to get away from work, because when you're working from home, it can be actually a time suck and a work suck, because the boundaries again are blurry. Right? So you're having meals while you're working, you're taking the phone while you're working, you're managing your kid, and suddenly you feel even more exhausted than you used to in the past. So we have necessitated social breaks, which essentially means that after an hour or so of working, you have to get back to your team in a huddle format and do whatever you want to do. You can bitch about things, you can gossip, you can exchange ideas around the Netflix new series, whatever the case may be. But just hang out, have this social interaction, because this is an innate human need. It doesn't go away. We've also then tried and build digital engagement. So every Friday, we have some contest for the entire company where everyone gets on Facebook and we try to come up with something quirky. People are sending their work from home shots and their settings. People are creating these videos. People are just creating memes, just to generally increase the camaraderie and to lessen the anxiety, because individually you just feel, hey, everyone else looks so sorted and I'm the only one who's anxious, so something wrong with me.
Yeah.
But everyone just needs to be told, you know what, everyone's in the same boat. Like even the CEO is just as shitting in their bricks as you are, but we're just in it together. We will make this happen, and you all need to just feel calm and feel a lot less stressed. So deploy technology and digital as much as you can.
Yeah.
Don't make it boring. Don't make these webinars. Don't make this one way. Just make it as interactive as possible. Let people express their ways. Create WhatsApp groups. Float jokes around. Float memes. Do everything that you didn't used to do when you were the HR, function in that company. Like
or things that you told people not to do.
Exactly. Like all of that needs to be there.
Yeah. So just to add to that, a few things we've been doing in addition to what you mentioned is that we have a weekly talent show.
Nice.
So where people from the company perform, sometimes with their family members.
Awesome. Very good.
We call it GLTV, Great Learning TV, and it comes once a week. And it's amazing. Like, I found people that I had no idea had these talents.
Awesome.
It's amazing. So that's something that's, I think, where the person who's actually the guilty of not performing in that is me. I have no talents whatsoever, so I have not performed in the GLTV. But that's been wonderful. And then, other thing I want to mention here, just like you talked about personal schedule, right? I think for teams as well, it's very important to have a schedule, right? So that's something that we put in place, which includes these hurdles that you talked about, right? So there are scheduled times, so I think having schedules for teams is as important as it is to have it as it is for individuals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there are still, a bunch of other questions, but I think, we have just 4 more minutes. How to maintain work focus in unpredictable domestic distractions? I think, tell us if you find the answer.
Yeah, exactly. Like, is this a polite way of asking how do I shut my family members off when I'm working? No, one thing that is, I should say this, and this has been, I hope that this is one change that the world adopts.
Mm-hmm.
3 months back, if you were on this Zoom call, and it's an official Zoom call and so on, and let's say your wife walked in, you'll be always like,
yeah.
And if your kid shouted, Papa, and you're like, shut up, I'm like, I'm on a call, whatever. I really hope that we don't feel any shame in the fact that our family is living life as a normal human being, and that this is a part of me. So there have been, and there are so many of these Zoom awkward moments that are floating on the internet. I find it encouraging because I want people to get comfortable with the fact that someone was shouting in the back, that you had this random thing dripping, that you had your towel or your undergarment hanging somewhere. Because no, this is me, this is my life, and I want you to accept me the way I am, and I'm not going to judge as well on what is it that I see at your end. And sorry, I don't know if you lost me.
Yeah, we lost you, but you're back.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I just got a call. So, and I hope that that's not the case. So, if your question comes from that point that my family is also always coming in on my calls and so on and so forth, let them, and let the other person be told that this is my reality right now, and I want you to be okay with it. Yeah. Of course, if they're coming and bothering you, then please tell us anything that you have known, because that's a global problem that hasn't been fixed yet.
Yeah. So is there like a, your personal most embarrassing moment? We're not going to judge you,
Actually, no, nothing like that. I actually, I'm so open and so candid about these things that if anything like that is happening, I just play around and humor it. So, nothing that's happened that shouldn't have happened. Like, maybe if there will be, I'll share.
So last question. So this is from a final year college student. I think it's an important question, right? So for people who are finishing and graduating this year, this is a tough situation to be graduating into, right? So how should they handle this gap that the crisis has created? Whether it is, should they pursue higher education? Should they, skill themselves? Like, what are some of the thoughts? Maybe this question got asked to you before as well.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, a very valid one at that. Let me start with something philosophical, and I'll tell you something which is very actionable. You're what, 21, 22 at best, and I'm sure in your mind you feel that you are insanely old. I'm sure that you feel that your life's over and that you haven't done anything as yet in life, and 20 years have gone by, and that you are a disaster, you're a loser, and all of those thoughts. And I'm 39, and I'm guessing Mohan is around about that age. And both of us, with pure conviction, cannot even begin to tell you how young 39 and 40 feels.
Yeah.
Like, there is just so much ahead of you. So if at 21, you're worried that your life's over because you're in this COVID crisis, that is someone just giving you really poor advice. Really poor advice. Because your first job is not going to define your life. The next 6 to 12 months are not going to define your life. What you end up doing for the next 6 to 12 months is not going to define your life. The only thing that matters right now are the stories that you're telling yourself. How are you keeping yourself uplifted, motivated, positive in everything that's going around you? Now, how could you do that? One, it's a reality that jobs may not come as easy. If you've been given a job, it's a possibility that they will be withdrawn or delayed. And it is quite possible that you will struggle for the next 3 to 6 months. During that time, think of everything that you can to become the best version of yourself when you do start working, which is an eventuality. It's not that the world has died. It's not that the world is over. If anything, and this is something I was telling someone exactly in the same spot as you last week, if anything, in 6 to 9 months, you will see more hiring activity than was 3 months back. Because companies have been desperately waiting to get back. And it will not be as easy to just recruit. So there will be industries which will see like, oh my God, we're just so not ready to have all of this come in. Like there are e-commerce companies that are now hiring in thousands in India. They are, and I'm sure, edtech companies, fintech companies, digital companies in general, they'll be hiring in hordes and hordes when normalcy comes back. You have to be in the spot where you're absolutely best prepared to monetize and to maximize that opportunity. That's number one. Number two, if it's possible, go for higher education. There's never a good time to learn, and this is the best time to do that. Do that whether it is online, do that whether it is actually a classroom, whatever is it. If your financial situation allows you to take that, please, I'll strongly encourage you to do that. Don't keep yourself unemployed and disengaged. Keep yourself unemployed if that is the case thrown upon you, but engaged because that's your choice. So don't worry. That's my bigger takeaway. This is temporary. You're going to make it. You're going to be fine. Let me be the one telling you, I just have 18, 19 years of having lived life more than you. So take it for what it's worth. And two, prepare yourself absolutely in every way so that as soon as this is over, which it will be 3 to 6 months, you're ready like a hawk to just come down in and pick up your target.
Yeah, no, I think that is great advice. It's you run into these young kids so often that feel the burden of the world on their shoulders. In fact, I tell them like, listen, this is like a timeout.
Yeah.
It's like it's a timeout in a basketball game. You basically have extra time now to get better, to think better, to talk, to do the equivalent of hearing from your coach, which is basically learn. Use the time to learn, use the time to make yourself more capable, more interesting, all of those things. And in fact, most resources now in the world are available for free, good resources, right? So there are so many learning resources that are being offered to you. So, take advantage of that. At Great Learning, like I said, we have a ton of good stuff, which otherwise, was actually, fairly expensive for many people, actually now available, very cheap or free. So take advantage of those things, pursue higher education, right? There are online master's programs that are there. There are, campus-based programs that will start, when the crisis ends, right? So, I think Churchill said this: never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yes.
I think it applies. It does. The best place it applies is for young people, actually. You can really use this. It's like you've been given extra time, and guess what? Nobody's going to judge you.
Absolutely.
Right? This is like time without judgment, without, so somebody asked a question, what if there's this gap on my CV? Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like no interview will ever in 6 months start with, so what were you doing in the last 6 months?
Yeah, that's right.
No interview is going to start like that.
So those of you that are in college and you have backlogs, this is the time to clear them with no questions asked. All right. With that, let's wrap it up. Ankur, always a pleasure listening to you. I think this was wonderful. Thanks for the candid answers. Thanks for sharing details about your personal life. I really enjoyed talking to you. Audience, all of you, thanks for your questions. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe as always. Do subscribe to the Great Learning channel if you want to participate in more such events. as well as many learning master classes and things like that from the best faculty that we've been conducting almost on a daily basis. Right? And do go to Great Learning Academy if you want to learn the most in-demand and cutting-edge skills. You'll be well positioned at the end of it. So, any last words, Ankur, before we sign off?
No, I just wish health and safety for everyone. Thank you so much for being patient. Thank you, Mohan, for having me. It's always a pleasure. And my best wishes to all of you. We're going to get through this all together.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ankur. The recording of this will be placed. Thank you all. Take care and be safe. Bye.
Bye.